But of course, we all know that sometimes couples just can't work things out, and it is probably in their best interest to separate. That is never a pleasant experience, but it's a fact of life. And our guest here today says there are ways that you can make the process go just a little bit faster and, more importantly, a little more smoothly. Howard Lotvin here is an attorney, a family law and criminal defense attorney in Kansas City, Missouri. And we're talking about some of the most common mistakes that people make in the divorce process. Welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, obviously, a topic that, we all hope that we don't have to talk about, especially when we're in the process of getting married. But if you are going through a divorce, this I found very interesting. One of the first mistakes that you say people make is listening to your soon-to-be ex-spouse. In a marriage, you want to listen, but when you're going through the divorce, you want to limit that communication.
That's correct. The problem is that either intentionally in some situations or just by mistake because they misinterpret what their attorney says or they're listening to friends and family, you can get bad information from your spouse. And I get that all the time, especially initial interviews, where they say, well, I've heard, or my spouse told me X, Y, Z. Remember that you only need to listen to your attorney because your spouse doesn't know the law or they're misinterpreting what their attorney said. And only your attorney can give you good information. And
then, of course, you have a lot of paperwork to fill out. So that's the next mistake, is people not doing or not having their paperwork.
Absolutely. The paperwork tells the attorney what the property is, what the situation is. So if you have accurate records on your real estate, on your vehicles, on your retirement and your investments, all this type of information on your debts, give that to your attorney so they can evaluate your case correctly. The other factor to that is if you don't have it, then the attorney or their staff has to start digging all that information up. And that's going to cost you money because they're going to bill fees to do that for you, where you can save money by coming in and saying, here's the paperwork.
Right. And then, of course, you've talked about the attorney and how important it is to have an attorney. And then, of course, you want to make sure you don't lie to your attorney. An omission does count as lying.
Absolutely. If your attorney does not know all the information, then they can't be prepared at trial or when they get that letter from the other side saying, did you know your client has a felony? Or did you know your client has had an affair? Or do you realize that they own a house in Florida that's not included in the property? So it's even a omission when you forget to tell them things or you don't want to tell them because you're embarrassed. They have to have all the information to be fully prepared. We call that the stake up the nose rule. If you're sitting in trial and something comes out, it's like a stake up the nose, and you win if you don't flinch. But the way to prevent that is by telling your attorney everything, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
And then real quickly here, you talked about property. Don't overvalue your property.
Absolutely. You know, that $600 couch you bought 3 years ago is probably worth 50 bucks now.
Right.
I actually tell my client, unless it's a collectible or valuable that you paid a lot of money for, to really value your property, pretend that you're doing a yard sale and you took everything and put it on the front yard, what would you really get? Because unless it's that Tony Gonzalez football or that $5,000 Ming stole or that Rembrandt, it really is not worth that much.
Right. Well, real quickly, we have one more to add on at the end. The last mistake you want to avoid is calling your attorney too much and then being upset at the size of that bill. Howard, thank you so much for joining us and giving us these tips. And, of course, we hope nobody has to go through this, but if you do, we hope that those will help you get through it a little bit easier.